And we are live this fine smoky morning in Sunnyvale, California. Usually say sunny Sunnyvale, but with the forest fires around here, you may have heard of them. The sun is blotted out and we're like 100 miles away from the fires. I can only imagine how bad it is for the rest of the state, down south and up north where the fires are. Shane Griffith, Senior Product Manager, located in snowy Chicago, is right there in yellow. We also have Mike Jensen, Senior Cat Herder, there in the middle. He is near me in San Jose, up in the mountains a little bit. I know he's got an awesome place up there, and I think he is also enduring the smoky atmosphere of California these days. And there in the Witness Protection Program is in Austin, Texas, which
you bet
is probably really nice out today, I'm guessing.
No, it's been freezing for days.
Freezing
record. Yes, like literally, yeah. It actually got below freezing past couple nights.
All right. I have a cold, so I apologize for the coughing and sniffling. There's just no way around it, and it's going to happen. Let's talk about a number of things. So we've got, of course, Moto 12.2 has been released today, so we're going to talk about that. First off, I just want to go through a few other things. Just talk about what's going on over at Foundry in general with the Moto team, who's been working on what, who's been moved around to what position. I think it's great that we have such a small community. People know the devs, they interact on Slack, and we get to know who's working on what. And sometimes those guys are the ones asking questions. Also, I think you have some job openings. And so, listen, a lot of Moto community members get hired at Foundry. In fact, I think Mike and Greg, I think, were Moto users prior to working, correct?
Yep.
And oftentimes, Moto, people start at Foundry and go on to other things. Like James Darknell's over at Facebook now, and there's just a whole list of people who start as community members, serve their time at Foundry, and then go someplace else, which I think is great. Actually, I think that's awesome. I think that means stuff is working. So Shane, I don't know tell us what's going on in Moto land nowadays. Who's working on what? Do you have any new members in the team or team members working on separate parts of the program? What do you want to say?
Lots. I mean, it's really been it's been a really great year, positive year for us in general. We've added I was just writing out the list. We've added 6 new people to the team just recently, pretty much. And that starts with I think Ellery Connell. He joined us a little bit, maybe into the end of last year, so he's not too new, but somewhat new.
Ellery was a Pixel Fondue member. He's got a bunch of videos up on Pixel Fondue. He's super. He was like a educator, correct?
Yeah. So we've plucked him off of your list and brought him on board to help do more in the creative specialist role, to help do training, to help do on-site demos, answer customer questions. He's constantly on the road these days. And loving it. He's doing awesome. And then building out that team, next in line we brought in Sergio Madera. I forgot what Sergio used to go by on the forums, but he had a different handle. Do you remember, Mike, what it was? It was Pedro or something?
He was totally eluding me.
Yeah.
Paulo Madera.
Paulo, yeah. So
he's got a little whale avatar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course, Paulo. I know the whale avatar, the blue whale. We've chatted a number of times. Is he in like Portugal or something? Is he?
Yes, he's based in Portugal. He works in and out of the London office, actually a couple days a week as well. So he's up there quite a bit. Similar type of role. Travels around, visiting customers, gathering requirements, doing demos and presentations and training. A lot of the great, new marketing materials and stuff like that is coming from these guys. So a lot of the imagery that you see being created is coming from this team of creative specialists now.
That's great.
Most recently, we hired Mateusz Lozinski, which was known as Mr. Uzu on the forums as well. He did actually most all of the 12.2 video content this go around. So he's really new. And then, actually, Javis Jones joined us too, a little bit before Mateusz, probably about a few weeks before him.
That name sounds familiar as well.
Yeah, so Javis has done training. He has a couple paid training things that we've published over the years for him as well. He's based out of Portland, I believe, so helping us out on the West Coast side of things. And then most recently on that team is Tim Blanchard. And I'm not quite sure where Tim is based. He's actually only a few weeks old. I haven't met him face-to-face yet or talked to him much, but he's another new addition to that team as well. So
Okay.
lots of new people in the field out there, you know, preaching Moto, preaching the gospel, if you will.
So these are Moto specialists or Moto experts who go out and about to different companies or corporations or groups, whatever, and demo Moto's features, answer questions, help implement or train people who've already bought Moto for their company, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So those are all of our like in-house experts, if you will, and both Andy and Greg, which is my next topic, they both started at kind of in that role as well. And a long time ago in my career, I started in the same type of role. If you're into the kind of wanted to do what we do type of a thing and into this business, it's a good introductory role. It gets you exposed to all the different customers. You're on the front lines. You really understand the problems and challenges they face. You understand the problems and challenges we face on the development side of things. And it's a great role to get exposed to and learn a lot. Just learn a ton about workflows and products and all that stuff involved. But a good natural progression from that role is the product design role. And most recently, we've brought Greg on to the product development team as a product designer now for Moto. So now we have both Greg and Andy kind of facilitating that role. And Greg's mostly focused on, I'd say, Mesh Fusion these days, the rendering stuff that we're doing, whether it be the AMD rendering, some cool stuff that Alan's working on that I can't really talk about yet. What else have you been working? Oh, the VR stuff, lots of VR stuff as well, involved deeply with Canova and the modeling stuff that we're doing there. Anything else? Go ahead.
Yeah, Unreal Bridge.
Oh yeah, and then the bridge stuff too. So that we're working on, that was just dramatically updated here for 12.2. We've brought Greg in. What else is new? Mark White is new, so we've added Mark White to help fill in for Moto Concierge. Unfortunately, Ed Ferrari pursued another great opportunity. I don't blame him. I don't think it was a bad thing, but just, you know, things come up, and he had another great opportunity outside of the company that was hard for him to pass up. So he's actually working closely with William Vaughn now these days at New Balance. So he's still in direct contact with us, obviously, a lot. But Mark is now coming in just in the last couple of weeks and taking over a lot of the responsibilities that Ed had. Giving us a greater voice in the community. I see Mark out there daily now, answering questions on the forums and stuff like that, bringing things forward into my inbox that I need to go respond to, or other people on the team. So yeah.
So we've seen a lot more of Mark White on the forums and Slack and things like that.
Yeah.
Similar. Yeah. And I think everybody knows, you know, Ed Ferrari or knew Ed Ferrari because he, you know, came on. It was probably a little over a year. Well, it was at least a year, right? A year ago, maybe. It
was actually just over a year. We brought him on at the tail end of last year as well, as a contractor, and then full time into the beginning of this year.
And so Ed was a concierge, and I think it's a great role. I'm really glad you guys are doing that because, you know, as social media has evolved, you know, things have become more scattered across. It's not just the, you know, Foundry forum. You've got Slack, you've got Skype, you've got, you know, Facebook, you've got even Discord. I think there's a Moto group. And so to have a guy who sort of consolidates all that stuff, you know, gets the right questions to the right people and just makes users feel like there's somebody there listening to them. I think it's super important. And one thing to keep in mind, you know, a lot of these names you're mentioning, they're people from the Moto community. So make yourself visible in the Moto community, right? You know, when Ed left, and again, like you have opportunities, these opportunities come up because Ed initially got that job because he was part of the community, and he moved on because he was visible in the community. And then his successor, Mark, you know, who do you look for when Ed leaves? Well, you look for somebody who's really visible in the community to take his place. And so I think, you know, I think the more positive energy and things like that you give to the community, and I call out one guy right now, Funk. If you have any rendering question on V-Ray or Octane, like he is there within like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
The guy is awesome. He's a great tester too. He does all kinds of bugs and everything.
Yeah.
But things like that, it pays off. Like it really does. So I just wanted to bring that up. Hey, Greg is lit. Would you change positions or?
I just changed a little bit. Yeah, cameras on laptops are awesome, aren't they?
Sun moved. So
I like this great intellectual looking globe in the background.
Yeah.
There you go. So I'm gonna get to Greg in 1 second with some questions about Canova and some other things. But Shane, just to follow up on this a little bit, I think a lot of people think of Moto's place in the world of 3D modeling, not just as a popular tool among individuals, small companies, boutique shops, indie artists, also larger game studios and visual effects shops. But you guys have really made inroads into different kinds of companies with Moto as a design tool, and a lot of these people you're hiring are working with these companies. Is this something you could talk about, or is this all kind of locked under can't talk about?
It's a good thing to talk about. I think it's really no secret that some of the companies that we're working with, you can at least follow the breadcrumbs and try to understand. We're obviously doing very well in shoes and apparel these days. So anybody with any experience in that market is definitely of a lot of interest to us. And yeah, I mean, it's really growing out quite well. So anytime you get into this product industrial design space, mainly around soft product goods, if you think about it, there's not a lot of really good, digital tools in that space to do 3D with. And Moto is just very amendable to those workflows and processes. And then you layer on top of that colorway, which we released quite a few years ago. It's starting to mature and develop and specialize into how they manage all the different variations of those product lines and product SKUs and create what's called tech packs for the factories and things like that. So things have really accelerated quite well for us in that space. And hence why, yeah, there is such kind of a long list of those types of creative specialists, because they're often on site helping, deploy and train up and get the rest of the design teams there up to speed on Moto and colorway and the other tools in the workflow.
That's right. So, the world of 3D users is really getting bigger, and it's great to see Moto sort of flowing into these new areas. Product design, it's completely different workflow. You mentioned things like tech packs and things like that. I know it's a very different workflow than something you'd find at a game company or VFX shop, a different nomenclature. It's a different sort of learning curve. But Moto getting in there is going to benefit everybody. We already see things like the stitching workflow and some new 12.2 features that I'm guessing probably came out of needs of that industry.
I mean, there's things that are specific, like stitching. The stitching that we did is very specific, for apparel or soft product goods, seats and leathers and things like that. But it's applicable to the wider industry. All the things that we put in place to get that workflow done and in place was a whole bunch of procedural modeling tools that then, go out there and enable a lot of different things, capable with the tool. So although it's different nomenclature, there's a lot of similarities across the technology and what's needed to be provided. So that's what makes, I think, Moto really kind of unique and really capable for that market in the same way.
So those of you out there who may be looking for a new job or your first job or different kind of jobs, you may want to add some shoes or soft purses or gym bags or apparel to your portfolio, and because there's probably a lot of opportunities out there.
There's a fair amount. And if I can slip in real quickly, we do actually have 2 openings currently. One for creative specialists doing all those types of things in China. In particular, so we need somebody over there, over in APAC. And then I have a developer role open on the Moto team directly for kind of a mid-level kind of experienced with rendering and other things. So we have an opening on the Moto team for a developer. Possibly coming into the beginning of next year, I'm looking to hire a UI UX type of person as well, mainly on the UX side of things. We have a fair amount of people and experience on the team from UI side. We're starting to get some of that stuff done in the product. but we need to go deeper with usability studies and put some proper UX design behind the products.
Right. Okay. So a lot going on, and that's it's interesting to hear you've got a rendering opening. So spread the word, everybody in the chat there. Before I go, I have some questions for Greg. Before I do that, let's just start with Mike. Mike, would you do some cat herding, and maybe you can post some links in the chat where 12.2 is available, any 12.2 videos that are out showcasing the features, things like that. If you want to just speak to that real quickly.
Sure. Yeah, I'm logged into the YouTube thing as Moto Geeks TV. So I just posted a link to the announcement that has links to everything, Vimeo, YouTube videos, all that stuff. William Vaughn posted a link after my announcement that has some of the videos he's made as well. There's some duplication there, but different takes on some of the new features. So it's good, good switch up there. Lots of good stuff. 48 videos. Trust me, I was going through it on Vimeo and changing the permissions on all of them today. It takes a while. So Andy did a lot of those. Greg threw in some with the VR and Unreal stuff. Yeah, lots of goodness there.
Okay, so those links are posted. If you're watching, just tweet them out, spread them around, get them going around the universe. I should mention also Pixel Fondue is having a lot of vendors like William Vaughn and Richard Yacht and Mario Baldi and a bunch of others who sell Moto kits and assets and training have gathered together to offer a Black Friday discount, but it's starting today all the way through Cyber Monday. So you just go to the Pixel Fondue front page. There's a PF coupon code that will be there, and a lot of those things are on sale. So check that out. I'll mention that again. I think William has probably posted some links to that. I know it's been tweeted as well. Okay, so that out of the way, we got sort of the state of the Moto. We have links to 12.2 training and the PF Monday. Greg, so you have been doing a lot of Canova live streams. We haven't seen one of those for a while. If you don't mind, can we chat about sort of the state of Canova, state of Radeon Pro Render quickly before we get on to what's going on with Moto?
Yeah. Go shoot for it.
Okay. Well, what is the state of Canova?
Okay, well, we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, obviously. We haven't had another stream or shown off any progress recently. Bill is hard at work on it, though, still. And behind the scenes, we've had a couple really interesting things that we've come across recently that will be ready to show. I think soonish is probably the right way to say it, right, Shane?
Yeah, he did just publish a new update to Steam, I think yesterday or today. I'm not sure what all was in there, but yeah, we've been working on converting from regular mesh or sub-D mesh to ADF recently, which is showing really positive signs. So that'll enable a lot of new brush capabilities and things like that, hopefully, in the product, and is kind of a key bit of the research that we needed to do to expand what we could do with this technology more than just having it be a standalone application. So we've been putting a lot of behind the scenes work and research into that area of things over the last few months. So things publicly have kind of slowed down on the visible front of it.
Yeah, it's not a public release yet on Steam. It is just on our side, just to make sure everything's working well. But from our perspective, that's just the steps we need to take before we push an update out live. But yeah, since before we got on this call, Shane and I didn't talk about what we can talk about there. And so
in the email inbox today. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that is one of a couple things that have been happening on that side, and it's all really exciting. The quality of the conversion is excellent. It's super fast, and that really speaks to the incredible work that our developer Bill has been doing on it. So Bill,
that's a really big deal, being able to bring in sub-D or polygon meshes and convert them to high quality volumetric, ADF volumetric item, I guess you would call it, so you can sculpt on it or use it as a template to start your sculpt. So that's big news. So we'll be looking forward to that.
Yep, definitely key to make Canova relevant to, especially just design and concepting workflows. And so yeah, look for more on that in the near future. We'll definitely be looking forward to showing it all, but we got to make sure that it really is in a state that's ready to show off.
Yeah, yeah. And then Radeon Pro Render, I know that was originally supposed to be, I think, coming out with 12 or integrated into 12. Didn't quite make it. What is the state of that?
We should have had a lot to talk beforehand, Shane.
I can address that. We discussed a little. We'll have a new beta out, which will work with the 12.2 release, so you won't need to get a special Moto build to run it like you did with the first beta. So that should be out soon. We just gotta make sure that the current build is not got any regressions on crashing and stuff like that. So it should be soon.
And that one has quite a bit of new stuff in it. So it basically, we thought it was gonna make this release. It's kind of one of those risks of being too transparent about the roadmap. I was really kind of dead set on thinking that was gonna make it into 12.2. It got really, really close. It just kind of reached the point where it wasn't going to be really of quality and completeness to make everybody, or to make, you know, a really good first showing of it. So we made the tough decision to hold that back out of the release for right now. The next beta build that Mike mentioned should have quite a bit more functionality wired into it at this point. And we have a pretty good understanding now what is yet to be done, thanks to Greg coming on board as kind of the designer role for that project. So we have a kind of a clear path forward. We're going to knock those things down as quickly as we can and continue to update it as a technology preview out there in the public beta site. But hopefully we're not too far away from making that a real fully finished plugin at this point. It's getting really close, and AMD's been pouring a ton of effort into this as well. So, you know, hats off to them as well for helping us along the way here. Okay,
great to hear. So still being worked on, ironing out the bugs. New beta will be coming out, and we can still definitely look forward to this becoming a part of Moto. Okay, Greg, what else is going on with your new role there? There's a lot of changes to 12.2. The UI in particular is the first thing that people are going to notice as the Moto beta layouts are coming, have been promoted to front stage. In terms of you still have the option of using the old tabs, but the layout that you and Andy Brown and Mark Brown have been working on a lot has been promoted front and center. Can you talk to that a little bit, or speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely have to give. I cannot take any credit for that. And Mark Brown for sure, and they've done an incredible job. You know, as a user, one of the things I'm just going to clarify straight from the start. The first time I opened it, I had a hissy fit because it was different. It wasn't what it was before. And then, but within 10 to 15 minutes, started to see the logic behind it, and it is a dramatic workflow improvement.
Oh, I totally agree with that. Let me just say, like, I've been using Moto since 101 or before 101. I don't know what it was. And I'm a stubborn old man. And I'm like, oh, come on, you guys are changing everything. And I was like, you know, I'm going to give it a shot. I started using it, and it really was within like just about a half an hour. So I was like, you know, this is actually better than what I've been doing. I actually kind of like the tab thing. I don't even know if anybody still uses it, but I had come up with that, you know, slash and burn workflow years ago, which was integrated in Moto early on, but which I had used. But this with the new, if you haven't used it yet, and I could do a screen share at some point if you want to talk about it during this live stream, but being able to pop open left and right panels and bottom panels and sort of have whatever you want there, like how you'll pop open a UV view or a schematic view or a mesh operations from the right, I often do, is great. And it's really quick. And being able to switch to different modeling and rigging and you know, game tools on the left-hand panels with little icons. Take the time to learn the icons. They all have tooltips, which is nice. And you will be modeling faster and rendering faster and rigging faster. You definitely will be. It is an improvement. And it takes a lot of guts to kind of do this to a program that's been out for, you know, over 10 years to really just put forth a new UI, because, you know, you could turn off a lot of people. But I think you guys are doing it right. You kept it as a beta layout. It's been available in the last few releases. You know, it's been moved into the primary, you know, launch Moto. This is what you presented with now, although the old tabs are still there and available. But I love it. I'm really glad you guys did that.
No, I think it was very intelligently redesigned in the sense that what I always kind of pitched as far as the tab layout structure in the past was, this is a great way for new users to get to know the application, because you have isolated sets of tools that you're using. But as you get familiar with the application, you start to realize what's actually special about Moto and the way that all the different systems interact with one another. And that's what this UI is all about, is being able to leverage that interaction between these different components and grab them quickly and easily and not have any sort of hangs that just destroy your workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's about smooth flow. And again, if you're a Moto expert, you're going to be using keyboard shortcuts and pie menus for most of your operations. But just, you know, a lot of times, like, these programs are so big, you forget tools exist. In fact, there's a new panel for selections, which I noticed, and which previously were kind of hidden in, you know, the drop downs up top, because there's a ton of, Moto has hands down the best selection tools in the industry, in my opinion. I really think it does. And I think that's evidenced by everybody copying our selection tools. Like, oh, double click a loop. Oh, yeah, it's a great idea. There's now a panel there that you can sort of remind you things exist, like select between and some other like really nice, and also the keyboard shortcuts are there as well. So that, just seeing that, even if you're a Moto expert, you forget these things exist. You know, seeing that they're there, being reminded of the keyboard shortcut, it's going to improve your skills, your 10,000 hours as a Moto user.
Is there any single menu that you feel, because I mean the menus themselves changed quite a bit, and some of them got you know, they were simplified, but some of them were also expanded. Is there any particular group of tools you thought was expressed better?
Well, actually, let me do a quick screen share if I can do that. And I'll bring up, this is unrehearsed. So do you see my 12.2 up here?
Yep.
So one of the things we're talking about is there's a couple of ways, you know, this is sort of how it's presented, but you're able to pop open these side panels, and you could change this from a rendering to a UV view or whatever. You could pop it back. You can also use Alt Space to pop these out like that. Now, Alt Space is one of the things I got cranky about, because I used that to change lasso selection modes and things, but I think it's better served as this quick viewport switcher here. And so if I want to do modeling, if I want to do, you know, procedural modeling, I probably, you know, want a schematic down here, and I probably want mesh operations over here. So I could quickly do procedural modeling if I want to, like, add an operator like a cube or whatever like that. One of the cool things though is this panel over here is contextual, which I thought was kind of neat. And here you can go from a modeling, UV, you know, topology, and we've got sculpting tools. So we don't have to change tabs for these anymore. They're all like over here. We've got animation and the gaming tools as well. Workbenches I'll get to in a second. That's a huge new thing with 12.2. But let me just add a new item. Let me just we'll just add a new mesh over here real quick and hide my procedural cube and just make a regular cube. But one of the things you can do is there's something called automatic selection mode, which I think is this one here. Let me just hover auto select. Yeah. So what this will do, get to a component here and turn on auto select, is I can actually, if you look over here, we've got contextual icons. So right now I'm in polygon mode, and this is everything you can do with the polygon. But now with auto select, I should be able to change to like an edge, I believe, or a vertice. Yeah, so I could change to an edge, and it's going to change my contextual button over here. I don't have to switch to edges mode. I just click on an edge, or if I just click on a vertex, and it'll switch my selection mode. It'll also change my context menu over here for, you know, different things that are you know, edge related tools, right? So I think that's all really kind of cool and a new way to do things. Also, I can get rid of these. You've got you know, the time down here as well. You can pop in or out. So you can do everything from this new interface. If you want to, you can jump to these others. Let me unclick my star here. There's you know, all the old ones are still here. I tend to use the star feature where I like to see Octane and V-Ray there. And I don't typically use the VR, even though there's some new VR features in 12.2 we can talk about, or scripting, schematic fusion. If you use those, you can star them and keep them. If you don't, I go like that and keep it a little bit shorter. But I see myself, from this point on learning to work in just this layout, and I think I'm going to be better off for it. So that's how I feel about that. So let's talk a little bit about workbenches, though. So yeah. Workbench is
a fantastic unscripted demo. I don't think we could have done it better early.
So, Greg, do you want to talk about workbenches?
You can go ahead. I want to touch on UV after you.
Mike probably is. Mike frozen on us? He might be frozen.
No, I'm just frozen.
Mike's just
not moving.
is one of the coolest things. But I'll let Mike explain it. He'd probably relate to the details of it better than I can.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I don't get to use Moto as much as I should. So Workbench is basically a way to create custom forms, custom tool forms with all the stuff you want to use. You can add scripts, you can add tool presets that you've created on your own. If you go in, add a tool, activate a tool, go in and change the settings for that tool, save a new preset, you can save that into the Workbench. So you have your custom version of a tool. And it's just easy to do. It's all done through the interface. You don't have to use the form editor unless you get into the more advanced things. There's horizontal benches and vertical benches. There's, by default, 2 of them exist in the UI. There's one in the, as Greg showed, it's at the top left list. There's a little icon for the Workbench, and then there's one up by the kit menu that one of the best things, that one of the big complaints people had was that they couldn't get their kits to show up in the Moto modes toolbar anymore. So you can basically add the kits that you want visible to your Workbench and have them sitting there waiting for you, right? One click away. And you can add it to anything. You can add them wherever. You can through the form editor, you can enable them anywhere. But
so it's really a simple way of customizing Moto. And what's cool is you can create a Workbench and you could just kind of click to whatever tools you want to use. You can choose a last used tool from a drop down. And so it solves the problem of customizing, not just customizing, creating a custom form essentially for the tools you use the most. Even if it's just temporary, oftentimes you'll find yourself doing the same thing over and over in one particular project, and you could just create a quick like Workbench for those tools, even with macros, I believe. The other thing it does is it solves the problem of the kits. And so what is happening is if you have something like V-Ray, there's just a ton of icons on the kit toolbar, and really what had happened is Moto sort of got more and more kits as it sort of has been growing over the last few years. That kit toolbar has been getting longer and longer and longer, and Workbenches allow you to customize that. So what you'll probably end up doing when you first get 12.2, if you use V-Ray, for instance, you'll just make a V-Ray Workbench with just tools that you want on there, and you can dock that wherever you want or keep it. It's just another form, right? So you can apply it to a high menu or something.
And a lot of those kits and plugins, they have their own sets of custom forms that can easily be modified and tweaked as well. So basically any form inside of Moto can now be edited and changed with the Workbench feature. So it just made the customization abilities of Moto just a lot more accessible to anybody. So instead of hunting into text files and the config files and moving things around, and then trying to have them to merge that to every new release that gets put out, gets tedious and becomes very difficult to do. This just makes all of that just a lot more portable, a lot more accessible, and potentially even, we haven't quite got here yet, but we are planning to update Moto Indie to the 12.2 release. This could be a really powerful feature for Moto Indie users to have a whole palette of custom macros and things like that you normally would have scripts for in regular full Moto, but Moto Indie doesn't allow scripts, but it does allow macros. So you can really create a lot of custom tools and interfaces for Moto Indie via this way as well, and share those out there in different ways.
Yeah, I do see, especially teams of people who use Moto having team leaders or TDs, sort of like what putting together workbenches with tools for certain projects and distributing those among their workers.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to one of the things Andy Brown especially has devoted himself to over this last year is making and Mark Brown. Mark Brown, if you don't know, has been with Moto for a very long time. And he's been behind the scenes a little bit, but he's responsible for not just a lot of the user interface things you see in Moto, but also vast amounts of the animation system. So very talented programmer and artist as well, who's been working on this. And they've worked together. It's great. It's so nice when you have Moto developers who are also Moto users. So you have Andy Brown, who's spent 10 years like going around the world showing everybody how to use Moto, now is helping to, and is now helping to direct how Moto is being presented to users in terms of the user interface. So all of these, the Workbench has been a big part of it. You've got the new UI that's more efficient. But you also have, this new really simple way to customize Moto via workbenches. There's a bunch of videos on workbenches, I assume, being released.
Yeah, there's I think 1 or 2 good in-depth quick clip videos that Andy put together on that particular feature alone. William has one out there as well, I believe, already to kind of explain it.
Yeah, totally. And so you'll see a bunch of that stuff. So
Andy, by the way, couldn't be here, well, for good reasons too. It's his wife's birthday, so he's taking her out to dinner tonight. So he couldn't make the last night surprise. Yeah.
Okay, we'll forgive him for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it is night over there right now. So just looking at 12.2, and just kind of, I've got some of the feature list over here on my left. I'm just kind of glancing at it. There's been a ton of new procedural modeling or MOPS, modeling operations released. Most of them having to do with UV. So UV unwrap, UV fit, UV pack, UV
a lot of selection stuff in there as well. Yeah, there's a large number of mesh ops. We're starting to get into a mode where we're able to do those things really, really quickly now. We do have kind of more forward plans to dig in deeper on the performance of the procedural modeling system, so that before somebody brings that up, it's definitely in the cards. Matt Cox is now back on the team full-time, going deeper on that. He's doing a bunch of other really cool stuff with math operators and things like that for mesh ops as well. Lots of stuff there. That probably the other big chunk of work, it's kind of a mixture of those two systems between the UI stuff and mesh ops and procedural modeling, is all the work that we did in schematic view. So there's lots of stuff there to just improve organization of the schematics, improve workflow in general. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I love looking at the schematic view now, and all my complex rigs that I've built in the past. It's like now I can actually share them with other people, and they can understand what's going on, because things are grouped well and they're notated and they actually follow correctly. I think it's one of the best updates.
Yeah, schematic has seen a lot of improvements. You got backdrop nodes, comment nodes. You got the little elbows now. You can do like a nuke, different ways of viewing things like instance links and connection links, some filtering. So schematic has shown a lot of improvement. Again, this is sort of like sort of ground level stuff that's really important going forward. Let me bring up a couple of my favorite features actually in 12.2. One is the jitter mesh operation, which is interesting, not just because you can like jitter verts or jitter whatever procedurally. It actually works with polygon islands. So you can constrain it to just transformations or just scale. So you can imagine it was like a simple example, and there'll be a bunch of videos on this, like Pixel Fondue and things like that. You can imagine using jitter to do procedural animation. Let's say you want to like pulse a group of spheres.
Yep.
You may have had to do that using replicators or something like that previously, but now you can actually just have one mesh item with a bunch of spheres in it, hook up a jitter node to it, click on use mesh islands only, and just affect scale, and you can set a min-max range, and you can hook up like an oscillation node to drive the animation and get pulsing spheres. It's a jitter node, but it's actually useful for a ton of different animation sort of features, as well as just modeling. Another one, and this is, I don't think to be understated, is you can now use weight maps as fall-offs. So the fall-off system can now access geometric attributes. This is a really big deal going forward, because now you can have, let's think about facial animation. Rich Hurry, I think will probably, I'm guessing, touch on this quite a bit in some of his future training. But you can have, let's say you have different morphs on the face. Previously, fall-offs, like a morph deformer, could not use a weight map as a fall-off. So if you had a smile, you couldn't have a left-hand weight map and do a fall-off on the smile, so only the one side of the face worked. Now you can have different weight maps in all different parts of the face, different morphs in all different parts of the face, and use those weight maps to attenuate those morphs. And it's not just weight maps, any geometric attribute. So I think there's like a polygon area. I think there's a handful of new fall-off operators that work with geometric attributes, including just the operator one, which lets you rig your own, correct? Similar to the selection operator. Let me just find the actual name of that thing. fall off operator. Yeah, it's just a fall off operator. Right. So just a fall off operator lets you rig your own sort of. So you can basically query a mesh's attributes. I'm guessing you could do something like have the fall off operate on only 5-sided polygons or something like that. Any sort of mesh attribute you want to feed into a fall off operator and then feed back into a deformer or mesh operation, you should be able to do now. So I think that's actually a really big deal going forward. I don't know if there's anything you guys want to add to that.
You went over my head on that one.
One people are getting, but if you've ever put together a selection operator, for instance, if there's not a built-in selection,
it was huge. I was one of the ones I know, like Daryl was really keen on for just some of his kind of magical assemblies that he's been doing with Mesh Fusion and procedural modeling combined. It does definitely unlock a lot of different types of workflows and things that you can do with Moto procedural modeling in general. So there's a lot of that stuff. We're going pretty, like, we're trying to solve the things that, you know, Mario's great and been doing fantastic stuff out there, but we try to look at things that can't be scripted on or edited on top of procedural modeling and try to solve the problems that those guys can't do themselves. So going pretty deep with a lot of stuff, especially as we move forward into next year and stuff too. We're going to go a lot lower level with that stuff, which is exciting.
Speaking of Daryl, there's been, of course, Mesh Fusion improvements as well. I also want to bring up that Richard Yacht has a Mesh Fusion training series out. And I'm not just trying to feed Richard business. I really do mean it that every Moto user needs to check out Mesh Fusion. It's a very unique part of the program, but it's also one of the, it's a reason to buy Moto. It's being able to do real-time Booleans with subdivision services and having control over the strip intersections of those Booleans as a product design tool or a just sort of a procedural modeling tool is super important. And I think there hasn't been the best or cohesive training for that yet, but now Richard has finally taken up that task to put it out there. I bought it. I've been using it for a long time. I think it's totally worth looking into. And even if you don't want to like buy the training, you need to like take a look at Mesh Fusion. But there's been a lot of improvements in 12.2, especially to the strips, more accurate strips and corners, and being able to set absolute widths and things like that. Now, Greg, are you going to be working with Mesh Fusion going forward?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so Daryl's got some interesting stuff he's been working on, and I'll be taking that forward for future versions. And it's when it came out in the 9 series, it was like, wow, this is an incredible proof of concept. It showed what this would offer users. Now it's actually a practical part of a daily workflow. They've really refined it into an extremely useful tool on a daily basis. You really don't have to figure out the little niggling issues anymore. So it's a very refined tool at this point.
And we've got Nvidia optics denoising now as well integrated. That is correct, Mike?
Yeah, so it's only available for people that are running Nvidia hardware on Linux and Windows. The Mac, they don't have a Mac version of the current SDK API. So once they do, we'll add that in. But yeah, if you have Windows or Linux and an Nvidia card, you can use the denoiser with the F9 render, the bucket render, you can essentially lower your settings, get a noisier output, and then very quickly get it denoised with the optics denoiser, the AI-based denoiser. So yeah,
so
it's great.
Nice to see that in there. And now Moto, the 12 series has been light on rendering enhancements, but Shane, you had mentioned earlier that Alan Hastings is in fact slaving away at something. So we can expect some rendering improvements maybe in the 13 series or sometime in the future, I suspect.
Yeah, I would, without getting myself into another rabbit hole like I did this year with the Pro Render, I would say that we're hopeful for something to surface next year, at least as another technology preview. He's been working on stuff, behind the scenes for the better part of a year and a half now. The denoiser work here was part of that. It was kind of a happy surprise that it came together really quickly for us, and we were able to put that into this release and get it out there. We're looking at expanding denoising options available to the product as well as we move into next year. So there's lots of different algorithms for denoising. There's lots of different approaches by different third-party partners and stuff out there. So we're trying to just make that more accessible to the users and to your benefit. It's pretty cool. I mean, I was really blown away by how noisy of an image you can throw at this and get back something that just doesn't look like a big Gaussian blur passed over top of it. It looks pretty decent.
Yeah, I think denoising is going to be used on 100% of all renders going forward in about 6 months. I mean, it's just going to be a part of the rendering workflow.
That last 80% of a render, or that just takes so long. The last really 50% that takes forever, and you really have a pretty clear image after that really quick first couple passes.
Yeah, a few seconds you do. And I think this will actually, the gaming industry, I think, will drive some of this now with the Nvidia RTX cards, real-time ray tracing. A huge part of that real-time ray tracing is denoising, real-time denoising. The new Nvidia cards at least have tensor cores, which are the machine learning cores that handle the denoising algorithm built into the card. I suspect Nvidia cards from this point forward will have those. And then I know AMD has their own version of those as well. They showed some of that stuff at SIGGRAPH. And so I really do think denoising is just going to be a part of everyday life. Denoising and even upresing. I think upresing, you can get like
upresing is really cool. I think that's probably more significant, actually.
I mean, it's crazy. You can render like a noisy 1920 times 1080 image and upres it to a noise-free 4K image. Like,
yeah, and it's
instantaneous.
So hard to tell.
Real time. So rendering people should be happy, definitely. So I have to bring this up because like 300,000 people keep bringing it up. The Bevel tool. So I know the Edge Bevel tool has had a major overhaul, I think in 11.
No, it was earlier this year. I think in 12.0 or 12.1, right, Mike?
12.1.
Maybe it's 12.0 or maybe, yeah.
12.0. So that happened earlier this year. There's still some tricky situations. I know this is true because I was trying to bevel some text the other day where there's still some intersections and things like that with the Bevel tool. I'm sure Taz is like just throwing his laptop across the room and is storming out the door right now. The guy, Taz, who does the programming, has spent a good, I don't know how many months like we're working that tool. But surely, we're going to have to keep hammering away on it. So we're going to see keep hammering away on those hard, tricky fixes to the Edge Bevel tool.
Well, I mean, no pun intended, but there are, it's a difficult one because there are so many edge cases involved with edge beveling that it's a tough balance between creating something that's very generalized and easy to use versus something that has every nth degree control under the hood for it, that nobody will probably understand how to use it for a particular edge case. So there's, we've kind of reached a point that from a generalized solution, we've gone as far as we can. And to be honest, we are looking at and trying to understand what could we do next. But it's hard to make, it's hard to say exactly how to solve some of those problems with the code that we have. So we've kind of reached a crossroads with what we're able to do with the existing code base.
Okay. There's your answer. And I think, another thing we tend to, look at Foundry to solve these, this is their wheelhouse, but I think there's open areas for a third-party text tool and things like that, where if some of the kit programmers out there are looking for something, I think that would be a successful kit. I think a text tool in particular with built-in, thickening and beveling tools would be something worth looking at, just my opinion. But anyway,
yeah, I mean, when you go specific and solving, writing, a beveling solution for a specific use case, it's much more solvable. But trying to create something that works everywhere in every nth degree is a huge challenge.
Absolutely. Okay, so what else? If you have some questions, we're nearing an hour here, so you can start throwing those up in the chat. I've seen a couple of things. A few of these have been addressed, like Radeon Pro Render, new beta coming out shortly, right, Mike? And then hopefully integrated into a 13 series. But we want to make sure that it's as bug-free as possible. I'm pretty
excited about the bridge, the new Unreal Bridge updates.
So let's talk about Unreal Bridge. Well, Bridge in general is sort of a generalized concept, and then Unreal Bridge in specific. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, so we have updated the bridge to what we call internally the scene transfer protocol, which is basically a backend that is much more capable of transferring assets between multiple applications much more smoothly. For those of you who used the Unreal Bridge in the past, you'll notice that large scenes were problematic. Reliable reliable transforms were also, especially as far as rotations, were a little bit funky. And by adding the scene transfer protocol, all that's reliable, it's faster, and in many cases even as much as 400% faster. And another pretty cool aspect, if you're transferring very large scenes from Unreal into Moto, you can actually see the scene populate and even manipulate items as it's populating. So it's a very versatile system that I think speaks to some things that will even be coming in the future.
So you guys work pretty closely with Epic, correct, with the bridge system?
Not actually a whole lot, unfortunately. We have good connections there. They were involved in the very early days of some of the stuff that we did with the previous XML-based plugin. But the bridge code and STP, the transfer protocol stuff, is all in-house technology that was developed as out of the research team here at the Foundry. And so we're looking to leverage that particular code base across a lot of different tools inside the Foundry and also external tools like Unreal. We had hoped to do Unity. We have a good prototype working of Unity. We'll probably get that out there as a technology preview here shortly as well. But we really wanted to get things right with the bidirectional workflows of Unreal first, get everything on the same code base across what all the different teams are doing at the Foundry. And now we can move a lot more swiftly in unison with everything that, the Nuke team or the Katana team and other teams are doing as well inside of that code base.
So the bridge code base is spread throughout the Foundry's different product lines, and so you could potentially have a Moto Nuke or Moto Katana or Moto.
Right. The ideal ones obviously would be, the ones where we're translating, geometry and material information, some animation capabilities as well. But we could do a bridge to Nuke. Mari to Moto makes the most sense. That's on the list. Moto to Katana makes a lot of sense as well. But we're going to look to do other things outside of the Foundry, like Unity, other game engines, other DCC tools. We could potentially replace the GoZ plugin with something like the bridge as well. So we're going to continue to invest in that area and build that out, longer term.
Is that something a third-party programmer could tap into? And is there an SDK for that? Or if somebody says, what else?
There is some things exposed. I'm not clear exactly. There is some of that. I mean, some of it is a bit internal black box right now today, mainly because it hasn't settled out yet. So we're pretty open when it comes to those types of things and publishing that type of information. But right now, the SDK for that and the object model for that stuff is changing too much to have a bunch of people building on top of it, if that makes sense.
Kane had mentioned, I'm just looking at the chat here, Kane, who works at Visera, and I know they use a lot of companies, like even myself over at Sabertooth use Maya and Moto, says his dream is a Moto Maya bridge. So there's possibility for that, is what you're saying. You're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, there's a chance of that for sure.
All right. So somebody else, let's see, Erwin has saying, hey guys, is it possible to improve the documentation for C++ and in plugin making in general?
I would say yes to that too. It's always possible.
Always possible.
But no.
Does he go through Mark White, the new concierge, or if you have questions, who do you talk to, or where do you go?
Questions you can always send to modo.help at foundry.com. Then Mark's the one primarily answering that inbox today. I have access to it as well. He forwards me things. But we'll go outward from there to get you answers as needed. But a lot of that stuff is of active conversations. Just as they get closer and closer, we'll be more honest and transparent about timelines and things like that. But very known issues, and we're on a much better path of solving a lot of those bigger problems these days.
Yeah, the reason I'd ask is Emmanuel Flores, who creates a Moto to Substance live link. I'm just curious if the new bridge technology is successful.
That would be another really great one to use it on as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a third party developer, but he could leverage the work that you guys have done and create one with Substance. Well, he already has one with Substance, but you could probably improve it with the work you've done, or create one with mega textures or whatever. It'd just be great to see other third-party people be able to tap in and add features and create a livelihood doing that and add it to the community.
There are bits of it posted as part of what we have to publish to the Unreal Store. So there's some insight there. It's like you can go look at our Unreal plugin, Unreal Moto Bridge plugin, to gather what's exposed and not exposed right now. But then just, contact us and we can get into more of the specifics around that too.
Okay, there you go, Emmanuel. Although, by the way, that his Moto Substance Live Link Bridge is part of the Pixel Fondue Friday coupon sale. So if you want to go buy that, I suggest you go buy it. People are saying here they love it. Okay, we've got, yes, somebody asked about Bevel. We did ask about Bevel.
I'm not saying we won't ever touch Bevel again, so don't misinterpret my words there as often happens. But yeah, it's a known problem. It's a very big problem, and I don't have an honest answer on that.
Yeah, that's okay. So here's another interesting one. Mads Madsen. I love that name. 3D freehand sketching with pin-free work planes. Could Moto Foundry not pick up on something like UMake that unfortunately only runs on iPads? Well, let me just say, there's some really innovative software on iPads. They're really, some of these smaller companies come out with some really cool stuff. May not be super usable, but certainly can serve as inspiration for some of the things you guys are doing in a even a Canova-like way. So freehand sketching on the work plane, something like that. Does that sound interesting?
Very. It's another area that I can't go too much into. It's let's just say we have a lot of active research projects around modeling and sculpting these days.
I like the sound of that. Let's just say we have active research in that area. So that sounds like a natural extension to me. If you're in VR or whatever, just using Wacom or whatever, seems to make sense. That's where Moto would go. Is some of that. Just doing, especially with some of the design clients you guys have now, just being able to sketch stuff up in work plans, I think would be a good way to go. Somebody's asking, speaking of UX, are you guys planning to integrate a quick search bar for every function Moto has? Now you can press F1 and get the little question mark and click on a button or whatever, and it'll bring up the web page. That's still working, right?
That and the help docs have gotten significantly more searchable over the last year or so as well. And there's some big new changes there this release too, right, Mike? I don't know if it's this one or last one. I can't remember.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. It was between releases, but we have updated the whole community site and the website with search. So you do a search on there, you'll find things in the docs, you'll find things in videos, you'll find things everywhere. So Jason did a major overhaul of the search capabilities.
So I don't know if that helps at all.
Definitely use them. Yeah.
We are looking at improving tooltips and things like that as we move into next year as well. Working on improving more in-product resources, video resources, and stuff like that as well.
Somebody is asking if denoising works on the progressive renderer, and I don't think it does because I think it needs a shading normal and diffuse.
Yeah, a couple render passes to function. It may be possible for that to work on the preview render. It doesn't right now, and it currently does not work on any other non RGB pass. Essentially, it'll work on all RGB passes. But that's more so, that part of it's a little bit more so on a limitation on our side. We're already looking at how we can expand it to be used for occlusion passes or other things as we move forward with it.
So the Clowners is asking, any insight into animation and rigging improvements in the future? I think that's a good question because 12 was a lot of UI and foundational modeling, bringing things over to mesh operations and UX and things like that. What are we doing in 13? What do we have to look forward to in terms of animation and rigging?
So we've done a lot, I think, already this year. Personally, I mean, all the schematic stuff is really centered around character rigging and improving rigging. from both the procedural modeling standpoint, but also animation. The actors and action stuff that Mark did earlier in the year was a really big, significant kind of first step towards kind of, I think, what you can kind of hint at what we're going towards with layer animation, and then hopefully NLA, you know, longer term. So lots of stuff still happening there. Lots of foundational stuff. A lot of everyday things happening within the graph editor that happened in the last release as well. So I think it's hard to see the scope of what we do these days because of the 3 releases a year. But if you take a step back and look at each one of those releases combined, it's significant. I mean, there's been a huge amount of improvements across nearly every area of the product. I think the only area we didn't touch, in one of the few areas, is dynamics, sadly. But there's been a lot of improvements kind of everywhere in the application. And that just goes to show how we're able to now act more swiftly with this development approach and do it without, you know, the serious regressions that we had in the past with stability and quality along the way. So long story short, you can expect to see more animation stuff, especially into the early part of next year. And we're going to continue to, you know, keep plugging away at that stuff.
Yeah, there has been a ton of rigging improvements, and I also look at mesh operations as additions to rigging toolset, because you can use these in terms of animation and rigging and the schematic improvements. Animation performance, you mentioned Matt Cox was back working on, who's done a huge amount of work on mesh operations and things like that in Moto, is back working on some performance improvements. Will those performance improvements and mesh operations also affect performance of animation?
Yes, yeah. So there's kind of 2 big projects going on currently right now, looking at performance of the procedural modeling system, and just performance in general. One of the things is what is kind of known as deformer performance issues, which really isn't so much a problem with the deformation system itself. It's more of a problem with how we draw to the graphics card and things like that we got to look at in different ways. So we're looking at just new ways to thread that system, new ways to do vertex normal evaluations and things like that could greatly improve that overall draw loop there. We've also been doing a lot of profiling and research around the material tree. So what happens in Moto when you get a significant number of materials and shaders stacked up? There's a lot of extensive evaluation of the entire system. So we know there's a lot of things that we can do to optimize that code these days as people are building bigger and bigger things with Moto. So yeah, that's another I would say that's probably number 1 or number 2 on the priority list for the 13 series right now, is to go pretty deep with some of those. But we got to go into it with caution.
Yeah, sorry for the coughing. I've got a huge cold. Some child at a bar mitzvah I went to for a friend last weekend gave me Ebola or smallpox or something. So I apologize for that. So lots of animation improvement. I'm just glancing over here.
Good. There was a lot of really good performance improvements in this release as well, especially if you were on I think Nvidia hardware, the Quadro cards and stuff like that. We've discovered some issues with the profile code that we had and driver code that we had. We worked a lot back and forth with Nvidia to resolve that. So this release in particular should have, upwards of, I don't know, 4 or 5x improvement for some people.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Just to clarify that really quick, if you do run Nvidia on Windows and maybe Linux, make sure you get the latest drivers, or at least newer drivers. We spec them out on our specs page. But what we did is we had worked around some issues with their drivers. We pulled out those workarounds, and Nvidia fixed the issues in the driver on their end. So you need to make sure you're running those newer drivers. The numbers are spec'd on the Moto spec page on the site. I think it's 411.63 is the Nvidia driver. Anything after that or better should work.
Yeah, I have a 1080 here, and I see a massive improvement in the advanced viewport. It's absolutely wonderful.
Nice. Yeah, somebody had asked, this is actually a good question. Is there any, it's not like this is an easy thing to do, but is something like Vulkan offer enough incentives for performance and feature improvement to consider switching over to, or is that not something you guys have really looked into yet?
We're definitely looking at all those different things that are out there. Vulkan, Hydra. There's lots of different possibilities of what we could do. Metal itself, could provide some performance boosts on the Mac platform in particular. It's a very deep topic, and it's very complicated times right now. But we are as a company actively researching all those different things and trying to make the best decision possible.
Yeah, that stuff hasn't really been sorted out yet, and
No.
I'm guessing about a year or two from now. Again, this is going to be driven by parts of the industry that is larger than the content creation industry.
Yeah, the Apple kind of earlier this year set off the panic alarm on that a little bit by saying they're no longer supporting OpenGL, but they haven't actually come out and said yet, which is a very key thing, exactly when support will completely cease, as far as the hardware or the OS will stop working,
Right.
with OpenGL software entirely. So there is a bit of a timeline out in front of us yet. It's not completely doomsday just yet. But that's a very significant change to all the industry and all the products. So I don't think that's not going to happen within a year's time. It's going to take a while to actually come through.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's not something that's just gonna happen. I think just that it hasn't been sorted out yet. Apple, of course, yeah. It's not a floppy drive, Apple. You can't just stop shipping it. All right. Physics, like somebody, I think Mario just Baldy, who does Xtracer and some of the other plugins, mentioned that they were working on potentially porting FF fluids to Moto. So that's interesting. Maybe.
That's fantastic. Mario, we're a huge fan of your work too, by the way. You're doing amazing stuff.
Yeah, Mario.
Yeah, Frederick.
Yeah, I've bought both Xtracer and the hair, it used to be just hair, but the whole like geometry to curves thing has been expanding. I think he's got a new version coming out with that fairly soon, and he's got a few other ones out there. But actually, Mario's part of the Pixel Fondue Black Friday sale as well, so I really suggest buying those. If you do motion graphics, like the CurveX stuff, or the CurveX stuff is great. Xtracer is great. It has some cool weight map stuff in there too. He's really gotten in there. He mentioned here on the chat that he's all about performance. You hear that a lot, and I think that's sort of the typical. Is like you've gotten 3D has gotten to that point like where processors hit after a couple of years, where most of the features you need on a day-to-day basis are there. You just need them to go a little bit faster. That's mostly what holds people up.
And we have to be able to leverage, not only the hardware of today, but the hardware of tomorrow. And we're doing a lot, to try to stay up on that. It's not, we're definitely not standing still. It may not be the biggest marketing bullet point anymore, but there's still a lot of effort and a lot of work going into there, and continuous improvement. It's just the problem is very broad, and we work in silos on that problem.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just going to go through a couple more questions here. We're running out at the end of the hour, so I want to make sure I'm not losing anybody. Somebody mentioned something about improving the rounded edge shader. I guess that would go to Alan. That I just want to point out rounded edge shader being sort of a groundbreaking feature in terms of solving both problems with geometry and some of the edge beveling things, and also baking these pieces down and bringing them into game engines. So that's a huge feature, but hasn't been touched for a while. Is there going to be any additional looks at that in the future, Shane? Or
this is where I lose track of time. I know we did something on that. I thought in 12.0. Is that right, Mike? Or we did
I'm
a
not
few
sure. Yeah.
bug fixes around that, either earlier this year or late last year. Nothing.
There's still issues for sure, but it's nothing that's trivial to solve.
Yeah, I don't think it's trivial. So okay,
some of the intersection problems. Yeah.
Okay, and so that's out there. Anything else? Let's see. Greg Brown, anything you want to add to? Anything with UVs or anything else before we
Oh no, I do. Yeah, earlier I was just going to comment that one of my favorite changes as far as menu organization is concerned is the UV menu, because Moto's UVs have long been one of my favorite sets of features in Moto. But it's a set of features that you really want to combine a lot of tools together, and that's what makes that set of features special. And I think the new organization there communicates that to users better and kind of shows some of the more nuanced use of tools that people should be using to really make amazing UV maps.
Yeah, UVs are one of those, again, like I talk about, you get into these, if you're sitting in front of the computer working every day, you tend to get in patterns and you forget certain features exist. Like Moto has an unbelievable number of UV features. I really think it's the best UV general purpose program out there. In fact, a lot of people use just Moto for UV. It's just what they use it for. And I do like the new menu organization in 12.2 because, again, it brings some of these tools to the forefront that you kind of forget are there. And there's been some improvements to, I think, the rectangular or the bounding box tool as well, I think, and there's some other ones. I'm just kind of glancing at the feature list here.
There's some packing ones as well. There's a good like 4 or 5 UV features, I think, in this review.
Well, here's a feature request. This is coming from me. It's a little technical, but the UV packing is really interesting in terms of whatever algorithm you're using to pack geometry into a surface. And I'd actually like, and now you have some procedural UV to mesh options in Moto 12.2 as well. So you can just add a mesh operator. It'll throw those UVs into a mesh item in your scene. And so you can use the packing to put geometry where you want it to on a surface and then turn that into a mesh. So for instance, I have a landscape and I want to pack trees together without them intersecting like they would with a particle generator or something. I'd like to be able to use weight maps or selections or an image or something to determine where the UV pieces are packed in the UV view. So I pack, pieces here and here, and then I can spit that back out to geometry, and that's where my boulders and trees are going to be, and they will not intersect because I'm using the UV packing algorithm. So there's one for you.
That's really cool. Yeah,
that is.
So lots of rigging questions here. Rich Hurry is going to be doing a new rigging course, and I'll be having him on Pixel Fondue. We'll be talking about that. So there'll be a ton of new information on rigging. Some of the rigging tools that are already in 12, like rigging driven actions. I don't think there's a lot of information out there quite that. And then the features are there. I think we need to get some more training out there on these. And you'll see sort of how this new animation system as Moto's moving forward into 13 is going to shape up. Replicators with no intersect. Yeah, that's Dimitro. I'm going to mispronounce your name. Go up. Replicators with no intersect. Yeah, that's one of the things I was talking about, using the UV packing algorithm to not have intersections, but again, having a updated surface particle generator where not just having minimum maximum spacing, but also making sure there's no intersections would be nice. Let's see. There's keep an eye on Foundry in case there's any holiday specials, Shane.
Yeah. Nothing I can say right now, but definitely keep your eyes peeled towards the end of the year.
Keep your eyes peeled for that. I think we're going to maybe wrap it up. Mike, anything else you want to say about 12.2 or where to get things or where to go in terms of tutorials, training, new feature videos?
Yeah, go grab it. It's live, and I lost the link I had. It's in the news section. It's got a link for everything. All the videos. There's videos on YouTube. There's a playlist. You can just watch them all back to back. We got them on. Go ahead.
Oh, I was saying somebody could post the links into the YouTube chat we've got going on here. Then other people can sort of disseminate those, their own personal Twitters and Facebooks and things like that, to make sure those get dispersed throughout the universe. Sorry, I interrupted you, Mike. Anything else?
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, so I'll throw it in there right now as Moto Geeks TV. That's the link to the announcement that has links to all the videos and help and release notes, all the good stuff. So
is the trial updated now too, Mike?
Yeah, the trial's working. So if you don't currently license Moto, you can go grab a free 30-day trial and test it out for yourself.
Yep.
Then buy it.
Yep.
Get going on it. One thing I want to bring up real quick with Shane and Greg here is we're seeing more advances in VR technology hardware. And I'm starting to see sort of independent little utilities that enable motion capture and things like that, or even just single item capture through VR hardware. We have a VR port that's actually pretty, it's probably the most well-developed VR port in any 3D program out in Moto now, VR workspace. Any development going on behind the scenes or looking into being able to throw a tracker on an object for product animation or something like that using Vive hardware or something along those lines?
No comment. But there is a lot of new VR creation features in actually 12.2. So we're still very active in that space, and I think we're probably one of the forefront leaders in true VR creation from a DCC standpoint.
Yeah, component modeling is now in VR. I think you really are like one of the leader. I mean, I don't like, at least in what I've seen from other programs, they really haven't offered much in there yet. I guess Unreal and some things have, but in terms of traditional modeling animation programs, not so much. Okay, so no comments usually a good comment. I like that. Sounds good to me. At least encouraging. Yes, Kasich was talking about.
Shane is right next to me on my screen right here. So if you see my eye just shoot that way, I'm looking at Shane.
Okay, Shane, anything you wanted to mention before we wrap this up here?
Go try it. 12.2, 12 series in general is a monster series of releases. I don't know how the team does it. I think we continuously keep topping ourselves year after year. It is I'm a little scared to say this, but it actually all signs are it's a really pretty rock solid release. There's probably something that's going to pop up, but we'll jump on that if it does. But I've seen a lot of good signs that stability continues to improve, performance is improving for a lot of different areas as well. There's just a ton of stuff in this release. So if you're on an older release, go into the help files, take a look at the release notes for all of the series in general, make your decision, based on the entire year, not just necessarily what you see in one particular point release, because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I have to say, it's funny that you mentioned stability. It's something we don't even talk about anymore because Moto has become very stable.
I'm probably going to use those words here in about another hour.
Everything crashes, every program still does. I get After Effects crashing. That thing's been around forever, and they've got 1 billion people.
Oh, Premiere.
Oh my God, Premiere! Can you please get that? Geez, don't get me started. All right. But yes, I'm really proud of you guys for how you Moto 12. I think has been a fantastic series of releases. There's it was quite a shakeup at Foundry over a year ago with a lot of developers internally and things like that, and new people going to different positions. I think Shane has done a great job of leading Moto into where it's at today, a very stable place, exploring new markets, bringing in new features, bringing in new technology as technology previews and betas like Pro Render and the VR and things like that people can mess around with before they get integrated. I think it's in a really good path right now. If you're just a casual Moto user, if you've been using something like version 9, you haven't upgraded for a while, I absolutely suggest you check it out and look into upgrading. In terms of the community, like I said, Pixel Fondue Friday sale, go to the Pixel Fondue website. It's right there at the beginning. Buy something, support your community members. There is a new page on Pixel Fondue called Top Picks, and that's something I've decided to do. And I'll just releasing 4 or 5 new top picks weekly. I try to pick things that I've actually used, and bought, and really have firsthand experience with, instead of just grabbing stuff from the internet. So when you see the top picks there, it's something I've used and have bought and actually have really am recommending personally. There in the top picks, and I will begin. That'll just be building up every week for weeks at a time. So. Thanks for doing the live stream. I will get upcoming live streams. I think we'll get Rich Hurry on here to talk about what he's working on. I'd like to get Mario Baldi on here as well. There is a Moto guy named Matt. I'm going to forget his last name, who's active in the community, who does a lot of animation work, and especially with that
Matt Mearsburg again.
Yeah. Character box, and so he's been doing some training for that. He does some awesome commercial work, ad work, and I want to get Matt on. Matt, you're probably hearing this for the first time, but I will contact you, get you on here, And he also does some nice training. Character Box is something we haven't talked about in terms of Moto.
That's a fantastic plugin. I'm actually just right now booking a trip to Japan to go visit those guys in December again. So.
Oh, that's great to hear. So it's it's a Japanese character animation plugin. I'm sorry, I'm talking over Shane here, but it has its own sort of rigging methodologies. It looks like it has awesome performance and a lot of features there. So I want to get Matt on here and talk about that. And of course, I'm open to any other suggestions we have coming up. But that's where we're looking as we're wrapping up. I think we may have one more here before the end of the year, but we're wrapping up the year, and I hope everybody stays safe. If you're in California, stay inside and out of the apocalyptic smoke. And thank you guys for coming on, Shane, and Mike and Greg there. And I'll try to get Andy Brown back on when he's on a date with his wife. So.
Yeah. It's a little more important. Sorry.
No problem. You gotta get away.
Yeah.
That's no problem. All right. Thanks, guys. Signing off now. Take care. Check out Moto 12.2, and we'll see you online.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks. Later.